What is the meaning of time? And can time really flow at different speeds depending on who you are and where you are? I'm Clive Cookson, the FT's science editor, and I'm joined by the world-renowned physicist Carlo Rovelli to discuss his theory of time and to put your questions to him, which will come through on this iPad. Carlo, you wrote a wonderful article for our FT magazine this weekend, which was the most read piece on ft.com. More than 200 very intelligent comments, some saying the best article the FT had ever published. So clearly time stirs interest and emotion in people. Tell us first why you wrote this book, your new book.
Well, first of all, thank you to the FT, and thank you to the readers who have appreciated the article. One part of the answer you just gave it, namely time touches people, interests all of us, because we live in time, because time concerns us. And I would say because time passes, flies, and we lose things in time. So it is an emotional concern we have in time. The other and the main reason for which I wrote the book is because in the physics of the last century, a lot has been learned about time.
Yes.
It's surprising, it's new, and a lot is being learning today, I would say, and there are open questions. So there's a big story about time in which I've been involved all through my life, and I wanted to tell the story in this book.
And the title of the book, The Order of Time, what does that mean?
It's actually a misleading title because because the book is about the disorder of time, if anything.
Disorder.
The disorder, the lack of order of time. The title of the book comes from a compromise. It's actually a citation from a preferred, well-beloved philosopher of mine, which is Anaximander. I wrote a book on Anaximander long ago. Anaximander is it's a philosopher of early Greek philosophy, so pre-Socratic. In fact, pre-Socratic is one of the very first that we usually study at school.
How long BC then?
He lived in the 6th century BC.
Gosh.
Right. So it's before Heraclitus, before Parmenides, before all this. The generation before. The well-known name before him is Thales.
Yes.
It's the only one. In fact, he was a pupil of Thales. And we know his ideas only through indirect sources, except for one fragment, which talks about the order of time. So order of time comes from this fragment. And he says that things in nature transform into one another following the order of time. I actually wanted the title in ancient Greek, but my Italian publisher did not accept it. He said, we're not going to sell a single copy of the book if we put a Greek title. And so I compromised for the Italian translation and then the English translation.
When people hear the phrase order of time, they'll probably think about time flowing in a certain order. Does time flow? We think of time flowing, but as a physicist, do you recognize the flow of time?
This is one of the key questions about time. We certainly know what we mean when we say that time passes, time flows. Even it is very hard to say precisely what we mean. It's one of notoriously very tough thing to say, except repeating it with different words.
Yes.
And it has been argued many times that in physics you don't see this flow of time. You use a t variable, so you describe how reality is at different times, but you don't see the passage of time. And I think that a lot about what we call flow of time is not into physics, has not to be understood using physics, but has to be understood from the specific functioning of our brain. It's a mental effect, so to say. It doesn't mean it's illusory, but it means it reflects the way our brain works. We remember the past, we anticipate the future, and we hold the past and the future in our brain at the same moment. That's what our brain does. And that's the source of this flowing of time. And exactly how this happens, it's an open question.
You need, by the sound of it, to be not only a physicist like you, but perhaps a biologist to understand what's going on, at least about our perception of time.
Yeah. Next week, I'm going to California for a conference, and the conference is just about the nature of time. And the title of the conference essentially is the same as my book. What is it? What is time? And the people of the conference are physicists, many, some philosophers, some neuroscientists, some biologists. And I do think, in fact, that's one of the theses of the book, that time has to be understood from all this perspective. Time is not a single thing. That's a key point.
Yes.
It's a collection of things. It's an ensemble of things. So understanding time means breaking it apart and understanding all its components, so to say.
And what are the components, the key components? Do you understand them?
Some of them very well. Some of them maybe we're sort of convinced but not sure, some much less. And the components are something about the fundamental structure of the universe, which is very general, which include quantum mechanics, general relativity. Some of the approximation of that due to our very specific, we are big, we are slow, we are small with respect to the universe as a whole. So we don't see the generality of nature, we only see some approximation. Some is due to our incapacity of seeing the details of things, so that we use statistical approximation to things, and therefore thermodynamics. And then there is biology, and then there is neuroscience. And each of these sciences tell us a little bit of some of the ingredients of time, of what we call time, comes in. So time is it's a collection of all this. If you take away this and this and this and this, very little remain in the fundamental physical world.
People love the idea of travelling back in time or reversing time. Given what you know about all the complexities of time, would time travel be possible, do you think?
Logically, it is not impossible, I believe. I think that what's called the paradox of going back in time, like going back in time and killing your grandfather so you can't exist, there are a little confusion of speech, so to say. It's logically possible. Exactly because our flowing through time, it's really nothing else that our having memories of our past and not memories of our future. That's why we perceive the past as fixed and the future of open. But our memories could, in principle, be different, and we could think of going back and having memories of the future. In practice, going back in time, I think, is completely out of our reach, and it will remain out of our reach for very long. Going ahead in time is easy. We're just doing it.
Yes. I've had a question from Henry Tan. Does time really slow down when you approach or go past the speed of light? Or is it just our perception of time that changes?
It does really. I think that thinking it's a perception, it's misleading. So if I take two clocks and I move one fast,
yes,
and then I bring it together to the other, the one that has moved faster is going to be early with respect to the other one. So it has measured less time. It's a fact. It's not a perception.
I've had another question from Ishara, again asking, does time flow? We've touched on that already, but it has such appeal. Does time flow, Carlo?
Time, as we perceive it, flows. No doubt.
Yes.
Time, as we perceive it, it's a rich combination of things. Time in nature in general, in the widest description of nature we have, definitely there is no single flowing time there.
Were you one person who's very much in our minds here is, of course, Stephen Hawking, who died recently, and he wrote the bestseller about time, of course, before possibly yours, The Brief History of Time.
Right.
Do you and he agree about the nature of time?
Well, Stephen is not with us, unfortunately, now, and we lost him recently. I think it's a good answer. It's a good question. I think mostly yes, but Stephen himself changed his way of thinking about time through his life. I think science, it's a path in which scientists discuss, interact, and big questions like this one evolve. One thing I disagree with him, but I think he was changing his ideas toward the end of his life, is about the beginning of time at the beginning of the universe. One of the most enchanting aspects of his books was this description of time being born with a Big Bang, the absence of time before. Now, it's possible that this is the case, but we are far less sure than 10 years ago. And it's also possible that before the Big Bang, there was another universe, so to say. So the Big Bang was a passage. And I think Stephen was contemplating that toward the end. I would say we would agree on that now.
I've got a few questions, so I'm going to shoot them at you before we have to stop.
Okay.
Is time, Nick asks, is time really eternal, everlasting, or do we just perceive it as such?
I don't think there's nothing eternal, everlasting.
Right.
Not even time, I would say.
Okay. Samir asks, does time behave differently at the subatomic level? Once you this gets down to your interest in quantum gravity.
Yes.
What happens at the subatomic and sub-subatomic?
Yes, it definitely behaves differently, to the point in which the theory in which I work, which is loop quantum gravity, we have the fundamental set of equations of the theory. We're not sure about them, but we have a set of equations. And there's no time in these equations. There's no time variable. So time as we know it is completely absent there. There is change in some sense, but there is disordered change, not a change ordered in time.
And your challenge is to somehow unite this view with the sort of grand Einstein space-time relativistic view of the universe. Yes?
Exactly. The challenge is to connect this fundamental timeless view of the world with the approximation, which is Einstein general relativity, and then the approximation, which is our common view, and our perceptual time, our the manifest time of our life.
I've got time for one more question only, unfortunately, and that comes from Gabriella. Why does time seem to accelerate as we get older? Well, a lot of people think that, I don't. But it's a common question. And is time actually accelerating as we age?
There have been scientific investigation of that. Of course, the clock time will remain the same, right? Because it's just the clocks don't age; they break. They don't.
Yes.
But there have been some scientific confirmation that, in some sense, time becomes fast. It's slower when you're a kid, and it's become much faster when you grow old. One of the hypotheses is that you're somehow, but it's an hypothesis, you're usually always comparing an interval of time with your life. And so if 1 year at my age, it's a teeny part of my life. 1 year when I was 10, it was 1/10 of my life. It was a huge part of my life.
Well, thank you very much, Carlo. The last 20 minutes or so have shot past, but I'm told we've got to wrap it up here. So thanks again, and congratulations on another marvellous book. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David.